Oh yeah, cool. Welcome to the side room, which is not, like they say, the lame room. It's the cool room, and you know it. Just because we don't have blue lasers doesn't mean we're not amazing. So let's get to know each other a little bit. That's me. Hi. I'm Ellie. You'll notice I look just like my avatar, Space Warrior avatar. I'm a web engineer at Trainline, which, in case you couldn't tell from all of my laptop stickers, Trainline is a digital train and bus platform, very e-commerce. It's why I took the train to Berlin last week. Bought it on my own app. It's fine. Dog fooding. It was great. Highly recommend the long distance daytime train journeys. There's a lot of cool window sightseeing. I'm on Twitter at EllieBelly. I'm big on Twitter. I love tweeting. And because I love tweeting, I've made a lot of the text in my slides really big so you can tweet it because I know what's in your head. I also have some hashtags ready. It's going to be great. I'm originally from Nicaragua, which is a small Central American nation. It's located over there, in case you were wondering. A lot of people are. But I live in London, which is not super far from here, hence the train thing. I work with React every day of my life, and I'm really glad to be here at React Day Berlin to see the community and hang out and come back to Berlin yet again. And I'm here to talk to you about business, but we'll get to that in a second. When I was first preparing for this talk, I had a really hard thought. I was like, okay, it's React Day Berlin. I need to come up with a topic. What am I going to talk about? So I was feeling real confident at first. I'm like, I'm a React developer. It's fine. I'm sure I can come up with a bunch of topics, right? I'm cool. So I started with the obvious things, the new hotness. I was like, this is what the people want to hear. And so I was like, should I talk about suspense? I'm like, I don't know enough about it. It's not out. It's fine. Hooks and memo and lazy. And I'm like, that hadn't even been announced yet. That was recent. So that didn't even exist yet. So I was like, context API? And then I went into my code base at my company. And we hadn't even gotten to that version of React yet. So I was like, I really shouldn't talk about something I don't use. Fragments? Portals? Does anyone use portals? I haven't yet. Ah, awesome. And I was like, you know what? I can't really say that much about any of these things. React Native, we have native developers. I'm sorry. I know this has been the React Native room this conference, but we have normal mobile developers, which I would replace them maybe. I'm not opposed. I'd love to hear the arguments. But anyway, that was all out. And then I was like, thank you. This talk is not about any of these things. I'm not going to talk about hooks. But then I had a crisis because I was like, my React is so boring. And I was heartbroken. I was like, I thought I was cool. I thought I was a cool React developer. And so I went through all the stages of grief, anger, denial. But then I came to acceptance. And I was like, wait, React is boring. It is. And that's not a bad thing. That's why it works so well for me. So a little bit about me. I work on a big product team. And we have a very public-facing website. It's e-commerce, so we sell things. And we're really in it for the money. You know, we're not trying to revolutionize technology. We want the dough. In this world full of terror and chaos and uncertainty, React is there for you. React is dependable and it's stable. React is boring. So I can only talk about what I know. So let's talk about what I know. So what I'm going to talk about, what we have here, is some really high quality, farm-to-table, organic, locally sourced, from the trenches, React in real life, trademark, #React in real life, for all the you tweeters. So let me tell you about some of the things that I'm allowed to tell you about my team, according to my PR people. This is our stack. We have React, we have Redux. You know those you might not need Redux? That's not us. We need Redux. We're huge. Not Facebook huge, but big enough that we need it. We have TypeScript, also due to the size. It's amazing. RxJS, which is still confusing to me, and Node. We have over 3 web teams, so we have to coordinate, all working on the same product. We have over 300 engineers and over 600 employees. We sell tickets. We sell train tickets from 44 countries and 14 languages on all these platforms. So it starts getting really big and really complex. The whole product is too big for one web team. And for us, stuff like brand is important because it's a very in-house team. We're not changing projects. It's like it's our code base, it's our baby. And of course, revenue is important. We sell stuff. Now, the stuff I'm going to talk about, disclaimer, they're not universal truths. They're my truths, but they are very wise. So take note of that. Also, they're my own views, not my employer. Okay, great. So, React Day Berlin. Let's talk business. Not this business where you do business and shake hands, but I'm talking about the business, which is this abstract entity, usually made up of like the decision makers in your organization or like product people, design people, finance people, layers of hierarchy. That's the kind of company I work in, like a bigger one. Anything above a single, and the business has like an opinion always. Hashtag the business. And you may or may not have seen this in stuff like the business wants to release by this Friday, which gets trickled down by like a product manager somewhere, or that's not a priority for the business right now, or the business really values this client. And your mileage may vary. Actually, I don't know that much about you. Who works here in a big enough company that this happens? Okay. What about like a startup? What about like an agency where you switch clients, that kind of thing? Freelance? Okay, cool. If at any point any of the things I say resonate with you or you've experienced them, if you could just give me like a whoop or a snap or something so I know I'm not alone, that would be great. Yeah, there we go. Oh, good practice. So let's talk about the business. Why not? First thing we need to know, developing for a business is not just making a website. This is past just like a CRUD application. This is not a landing page. This is a web app, right? And it has interactions. It has money involved. And there is so much that permeates your consciousness as a developer that is more than just the website. So you have to keep in touch with all these like brand and product and security and analytics and metrics and logging, and everything needs to be measured. And the stakes start getting like really high after a while. And the dev life isn't exactly compatible with this all the time. And so what we need to know is there is a natural nature born this way divergence between the goals of the business and the goals of a developer. So like the business wants like rapid development and like cool new features that will generate revenue. And a developer, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but at least the developers, I know we want to like write good code and like optimize our code and make it like really resilient and work on challenging features that are interesting. And that's not necessarily what the business wants. Size is important too. At a certain organizational scale, there are challenges understanding both code and humans. I used to work at a place where we still had a product that we sold. It was like a software as a service thing. But the team was small enough and the code base was small enough that we could sort of reason about it more easily. But then once it gets too big, we just sort of have to give up. It stops being small enough for a single person. And some of the challenges that that comes with, and these aren't symptomatic of a large organization, but they are amplified in a large organization. So if you've seen any of this at any size, let me know. Miscommunication, changing requirements, scope creep, changing dependencies. We changed the vendor that provides this service, and now we have to rewrite the whole thing. Turnaround pressures, deploy yesterday. Yep. Onboarding and handovers, there's 3 new people, and everyone who knew anything about this code base is now gone because Facebook took them. Yep. Documentation, does it exist? Where is it? How do I find it? I know, right? Measuring everything. How much money did we make? How many users? Where did they click on? How many times did they breathe while they were selecting this option? Recruitment, the market is right now. Morale and the developer experience, everyone's sad sometimes, and they're like, oh, my manager. And more. Not limited to this. And like many other places, we either had this or we knew about this and we were trying to avoid it. And so I'm going to talk about how React has enabled us to try to mitigate some of these things that come with organizational structures. So the first thing that React was really good for is that it's popular. No doubt about it. We all know this, right? React is super popular. This is a graph from the internet that sort of shows that. I don't know what these dips are about, so I wouldn't like take it like full face value. But obviously, the big one is React, the higher one. So that's a good thing for a business, for us. Ubiquity is good for business. It helps with recruitment. There's a wider pool of developers. There's a wider pool of resources, learning. You don't have to like pay some consultancy a shit ton of money to come train your developers in like some obscure language. Tooling, there's all these things that are already written. And because the ecosystem is so large, we can save time and money, because the business, just copy pasting stuff from the internet, which is great. So that's sort of the first point why React is amazing. This, by the way, this talk is going to be super self-congratulatory of React. This is the happy, this is why we're all here talk. So get ready for that. It's also good for the devs and for the business. So it's like it's like bringing us a little closer from our diverging paths, because we have so much out on the internet. The other reason React has been working super well for a large sort of mishmash of teams is that React, because of its very modular and declarative self, works really well with design systems and component libraries. And businesses that are in-house and not agencies love branding. They love their brand, they love consistency, and they also love having a bunch of different teams that don't sit on the same floor have to talk to each other about these things. We use Storybook, which you guys may know. We have a component library. It helps us keep the brand consistent because, like I mentioned, we have more than one web team working on the same product and just on different parts of the flow. This is an example. We can keep track of stuff like accessibility. We can share this with the designers, which is really important because we have a whole other design team. They don't always sit next to us, and this really helps bridge that gap. This is just some tabs. It's pretty. It also serves as documentation. It's easier to find, and it sort of happens naturally without someone having to be like, I'm going to sit down and write documentation. So this part of the ecosystem has been super helpful. But what about the devs? What about the dev life? This is a picture of me on a Tuesday. One of the big things that we've had to work with is dependency abstraction. And actually, some people already talked about this a little bit. If you saw Oleg's talk earlier about feature-driven architecture, it's sort of down that line. There are third parties in a big business. We have providers for analytics, and we have a different company that takes care of the translations, and we have a different company that takes care of, I don't know, whatever X or Y service. And so for us as developers, it starts getting really complicated to find out like who the provider is and do they have a good customer service and who do we have to talk to if it breaks, that kind of thing. You can't be a specialist at everything. So this is sort of like the crucial part. In a large code base, reducing the mental overhead of a developer becomes obligatory. It doesn't all fit in one brain. Also, if you haven't seen this video of Lil Dicky the rapper that features the brain, highly recommend it. So as developers, we need to be productive. The business demands it. But we can't keep all of the moving parts in our brain. So there are some sort of approaches to this, and React is really good for it. And one of them is write something once and hide it away forever. So our current code base is something like 2.5 years old. And when we started, there was stuff like config, which we had to, this is like the mini map on its side because it didn't fit on one slide. I don't want anyone to see that. Or stuff like logging, we have to log to the platform services people and to the analytics people and to the whatever people. And that, you don't necessarily have to edit that in a day-to-day. Redux middleware is really great for that. We use that a lot to sort of chunk away components, hide them. Then there's ride the hard part once and expose a simpler API for better developer experience, which is DX sometimes on the internet, hashtag DX. And this has actually been one of my favorite parts, because anytime we have to do a new businessy thing, we can just hide it away behind either a React component or a Redux action. And then the next time we onboard someone, we don't have to be like, well, this is our third-party service, and these are all the minutiae of the things that are specific just to that. We just say, just run this action. That's it. And then they don't need to know why. They can just do it. But they don't need, I mean, the fun part of the development is not figuring out what this provider does. It's creating the new features and doing the engineering. So for example, in a large customer-facing business, we do a lot of A/B tests. And for a while, we did not do this. So this is just an A/B testing component, and you just give it a name and give it the A side and the B side. And that auto-magically, because we've written it and hidden it away forever, talks to our A/B testing service and runs all the configuration, and anyone who wasn't there that day doesn't have to think about it. And that helps both the business and the developer. We also have stuff like analytics. We have to track every click and every movement. We're watching you. Don't think we're not. We have a whole team actually for analytics. And so what they need to be busy about, like what service are we using? So we do a Redux action. And it's fine. And we can just teach that easily. It helps. It's also pretty sort of self-documenting a little bit, because instead of going into some manual of some third-party thing, you can be like, oh yeah, just the Redux action, no big deal. We have stuff like translations. We use a React Intl library. I don't know if any of you have used it. It's really good. Yeah. And we have this thing where if you append your Git branch with a certain special word, the service will commit the translation to your PR. And then you don't have to think about it. And then we had this colleague who joined like a couple months ago, and he came up to me and he was like, Ellie, where do our translations come from? I've been here for 2 months and I have no idea. And I was like, well, actually, and then I, explained the backstory. But the fact that it took 2 months to even ask is a wonderful thing, because then he could focus on building the features and creating and like having fun and not worrying about like, docs. Bonus, if the dependency changes, and in the business, it often does. There are contracts, there is money, it gets too expensive, you get into a fight with the business person from that other company in that third-party service. So you can just swap it out, and it doesn't affect your dev productivity. It doesn't affect your developer happiness, because developers do get really angry when you change something on them. Change is scary. Saves time, saves money. So far we're doing pretty well in the React ecosystem. We have a better developer experience. We can speed up the development. We can future-proof our code base for change, which is the ever-present constant in the business. And then there's stuff like discoverability and self-documentation that really just drives it home. So what is it about React that makes it so special for a big business? What does it help us do easily? And we were trying to think about this in my team earlier, and we came up with this. React brings reliable, repeatable patterns, but no huge constraints or opinionated setups. So it's like a toolbox, but battery is not included. So it gives you the flexibility to do what you need to do with the confidence that you're not going to fuck shit up, which is, again, important for the business. I call this structured flexibility. Is that an oxymoron, Ellie? I'm sure it is, but I'm calling it that anyway. Hashtag structured flexibility. And you might have to write less code, maybe, for a big business, because you have to work a little bit slower, make sure nothing breaks, higher stakes, but it's going to be good quality. And the flexibility that React affords us is a great part in that. Bonus, TypeScript is bae. It's been super good for communicating with the other teams and like new devs and even different pages within the product, figuring out what's going on. TypeScript helps. Obviously, it's not perfect. There are some pain points. I can't really talk about how amazing React is for a business without some of this. So stuff like upgrading is hard for us because we do have TypeScript and we have all these other dependencies. And so anytime we move up React, we have to sort of bring all these like 10 things up with us. And sometimes the TypeScript types aren't ready, so we have to put in a pull request or wait or comment. It's a slow process, which is why we don't yet have, well, now we have fragments, I think, but we don't have the context API and that kind of stuff. Business things. We do miss the new hotness sometimes. Like if you saw Kitsa's talk, we do get FOMO, and it's a real thing. And sometimes people are like, oh man, I wish we could insert cool React thing here. But we get over it. The styling wars, we still don't love how styling is a thing. CSS and JS, style component. Style components wasn't like as popular when we started this project, so we don't use it. We use some other CSS and JS thing, and it's like fine. And then just the time it takes to build anything or test anything because it's so big. It's like, I wish it were faster. We had some side project or something. But all in all, it's not just the framework, it's the ecosystem. It's the community, which is all of you here today. The ecosystem helps us build abstractions. It helps us create this common language, not only for development across teams, within squads, but also like with the designers, that kind of thing. And keep up with the rate of change because it's so popular and it's evolving quite quickly while staying stable for the rest of us. So we're not on the cutting edge. We can't afford that. We're more risk averse, right, as a product profit company. So no doubt this talk is like a love letter a little bit to the community and to the ecosystem. And keep, you know, building cool stuff because we're going to need it. And I think this is really great. It enables us as developers to adapt to organizational frictions because hashtag React in your life isn't always I get to use the suspense for the super cool like drum demo. Maybe it's like I have to fix this checkout page, otherwise we lose like a bunch of money and we have to fight with some people in a different floor. But then when it comes to development, we can be confident in our choices. And so then I sort of got over my sadness that my React was boring because my boring React is actually a great asset. And this, I mean, this has been a very personal, emotional roller coaster for me because I like to think of myself as like super cool, but actually I'm super corporate. So it's like, So yes, React is so good. And we are at a React conference. So this isn't a hot take. We're all here because we know it's good and we're all here because we love it. I'm not so lacking in self-awareness that I don't know you don't already know this. I am pretty self-indulgent though, so I'm saying it anyway. So it's not a hot take, but what it is, it's a celebration. We should celebrate. Woo! Yeah! That we have these amazing tools that'll push us forward, not hold us back, and that's even with the challenges that come with the real world and the business. It's also a reminder that React is resilient, even if it's constantly evolving, even if it's the hot new thing, it'll be there for you. It's dependable. It's also an act of gratitude to the humans behind the magic. It doesn't just exist, right? There's a community, there's contributors, it's open source, the team at Facebook, the team on GitHub. So thank you if you're watching or if you're listening. It's really nice that you've created this for us. That is an amazing, empowering tool. Also, sort of similar in the FOMO track, it's an acknowledgement that it's okay not to upgrade right away. Like, I'm not going to judge you. It's maybe not in the interest of the business. And maybe what works for me doesn't work for the next person. So be happy in your choices. You don't have to be at the cutting edge all the time. So what I'm trying to say really is that the future looks bright for React and that we should all be very thankful that it exists and that we can work with it because it's been around for a bit now without completely fucking shit up like Angular did. And I think that's a really key point here in that we're cool. It's like a state of the union, right? Like we're doing all right, right? Yeah. So thanks for that. And like, hopefully I'm glad to see you here and hopefully you're glad to be here and let's keep building cool shit together. Thank you. Tweet at me.